You're listening to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. Here you'll gain tools to lead proactively, conquer overwhelm, and revitalize your law enforcement teams and your agency.
We're your hosts, Michael and Kathy McIntosh. Mike is a retired sheriff and current division chief in the Denver metro area with nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience.
Kathy is a business and branding expert and a longtime law enforcement wife with a unique perspective on the human side of law enforcement.
Together, we share a powerful blend of practical experience and insightful roadmaps to help you elevate your call to service.
Well, welcome back. Today we're tackling a critical question. Is your personal leadership killing your professional leadership potential?
Overwhelm is often a silent killer of strong leadership, and our listeners in law enforcement juggle more incidents in 5 minutes than most people handle in an entire week. Often they feel stuck, they get in their head, they overthink, and then they think, am I in over my head? Do I have what it takes to do this on a daily basis? But there's a solution to all of this, and that is stronger personal leadership. By knowing yourself, setting clear expectations for yourself, and staying disciplined, you can transform the weight of overwhelm into a path of leadership that you want to pursue.
Exactly. It's overwhelm that often leads us to neglect our personal leadership or kind of the way we lead and manage our own thoughts, responsibilities, and actions. When that suffer, it leads us to be reactive in our decisions. It leads to fractured teams and ultimately can lead to some very sleepless nights. And today, we're going to share some practical steps to really kind of start to walk you through so that you kind of understand how to lead yourself well, so that you can elevate your impact with your team.
Often overwhelm, as you said, is the core problem, and just knowing how to manage yourself well can be essential for law enforcement executives, especially with shift work and just ever-changing landscapes. We talked so much on our last episode about controlling what you can control, and having strong personal leadership is just right along those same lines. I know that you felt overwhelmed. I know you've been there, done that.
Yeah, I've certainly over my career felt overwhelmed really kind of start to creep in at different points. And really without that personal leadership, you can really get stuck in that cycle of reactivity. It can lead you to snap at deputies, second guess yourself, or lie awake wondering if you're failing. And that's really what causes those sleepless nights. Mm-hmm. You feel isolated, and many times you even start to push your family away because of the pressures that you're feeling at work, because of that overwhelm that you are really feeling at work. And that's not a healthy cycle to start or to get yourself into.
No, it really isn't. And there were a lot of years that I spent wondering, is there something wrong with us? Is there something wrong with me? Because you were just clearly distracted. And one of the things we had to work on with our own personal leaderships was talking through hard things and being able to communicate through it instead of just assuming that I knew what was making you tick. Right. And often when, I just said, what's going on, it was enough to jar you into, okay, I'm not myself. Let's try to get the wheels back on the bus so that we can head in a better direction. And that's just one example of how personal leadership can really be the antidote to overwhelm. When we can intentionally direct our thoughts, when we can purposefully direct our actions and lead with clarity, it's really helpful to start shaping lives for your team and for your community as well.
Yeah. When I think about leaders and think about leaders at every rank, every one of us needs that personal leadership to really model integrity, because without it, overwhelm starts to kill your confidence mm-hmm. and your team's trust, and that's not where we want to find ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So we just have to remember all the time we're working to inspire our team. We're working to strengthen trust in our teams and in our communities, and we always have to be prepared. We have to go out and be the very best person that we can be, especially in a high stakes job like law enforcement.
Right. Yeah, that whole piece of really knowing who you are.
Yeah. That leads us right to that first point. When we examine who we are authentically, it really starts to fuel our personal leadership. We can explore and be self-aware. We can start to understand what our natural gifts are and what things that we've done to earn the experience that we have going forward. I know we've talked a lot about what those gifts can be, and some people have a really hard time identifying their own gifts and strengths. They're like, that's just egotistical. I'm a lot more humble than that, and that's a good trait to have. But I think there's a level of being honest with yourself and knowing who you are so that you can capitalize on the things that you were naturally given and designed to do and do them well. So I'm just going to ask you, for example purposes, what do you see as your natural gifts and your talents in law enforcement?
I would say where I'm at right now, and it took me a while to get there. I would say that one of the first things that comes to my mind is I've now developed that ability to be calm under pressure.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that is just through experience and through repetition of being through different crises and being able to really work the problem and understand that over the years, we, and when I say we in law enforcement have developed that ability to work those problems. We understand where it is that we need to go and what it is that we need to do. And then I would also say that one of my strengths is relational. Now that's something I think that I've always had. When I look back to even some of my leadership roles in the military, uh, it it was really starting that relationship piece of it was natural for me because I'm a relational type of person. And then I would say, kind of finally, collaborative. And I think what people see in that is just my desire to not make decisions or not go in a direction in a vacuum, but really start to work with people so that I understand where everybody's coming from. And as much as I can, I try to be collaborative before I make a decision that's going to have impact on really on other people's either professional lives, which, as we all know, can bleed into their personal lives. And it's kind of funny because when people first meet me, and I noticed this really when I moved from one agency to the other when I retired from my first agency. I was
Now all of a sudden you're the new guy.
right. I'm the new guy, and they really don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
And a lot of times in law enforcement, because we're a paramilitary organization, if it's somebody with rank, it's that rank at times can even make a person unapproachable,
Mhm.
right? And I think people were very interested to find that isn't so with me. I want to have those conversations. I want to be relational, and I want to be collaborative with my team and those that I'm working with. So it's for me, that's just my authentic self, and I really love to work
Mhm.
in that environment.
Mhm. Yeah, and a lot of people don't expect you in your rank and your profession to be collaborative. So you have a choice. You can set that part of yourself aside and try to not be collaborative and make all the decisions because you think you're supposed to do it that way. Or you can walk in that
Right.
authentic self that you just mentioned and shine.
Yeah.
It's okay to be something different than what people expect. And I laugh too, just going back to being the new kid on the block, from time to time. It's you also have a way of just watching and observing for quite some time before you move into interacting and building those relationships. And so now the rank and the distance that appears to happen makes people kind of go, who is this guy? Do we like him? People say nice things about him, but I'm just not sure for myself. And then all of a sudden you let your guard down or you say something funny and the whole landscape changes and it's a whole different ball game. So again, it's so important just to be who you are, authentically wired, designed, created to be, and let yourself shine in those ways. There's also things, other ways to know yourself, and those are, what are your core values? Like integrity is extremely important to me, or I really value fairness, those kinds of things. Another thing to look at is what gives you energy, and move yourself in that direction. Do you enjoy watching other people succeed? Do you like having a hand in helping them succeed? What is it that really fuels your passion?
Yeah, and I just want to expand on that energy piece a little bit more. I think it's so important to really find what that is in you, because when you do, it really is a game changer. It affects the way that you carry yourself. It affects the way that you show up at work. When you find that piece that really energizes you, and it's interesting. I was at dinner with some of the teammates last night, and they were talking about a couple of other teammates that weren't there at that dinner with us, and that whole, we've heard the word FOMO, right? That fear of missing out, and how, that team, there's this energy around that team, and they enjoy working together, and they're a high performing team, and they trust each other, um, with their lives ultimately.
Ultimately,
But they're so well connected that there's this fear of missing out if they're not, because they're on a vacation day, or on a holiday, and they're not part of the team that day. They're texting, they're trying to figure out, well, what's going on now, and that's a wonderful place to be, because there's so much growth in that, and the team can really start to accomplish a lot of different things if their leader allows that to flow throughout the team.
mm,
So that I don't think that you can um, over appreciate that, knowing what energizes you, so that when you show up at work, you're on, right? You're already
mhm.
energized. You like being there. You enjoy going to work. So I think it's really important.
There's another thing to self-examine too, and that's your weaknesses, and what is it that you're not so strong in? And when you examine those weaknesses, it's not, permission to beat yourself up, or to, ridicule yourself, or to start being self-conscious about things, but to figure out how to handle it. So, do you need to develop your strengths, or do you need to delegate those areas to someone else in your team who's
Right.
probably really good at them?
Right.
I mean, some things you have to develop, right? Because you have to.
Yeah.
You can't be without them.
Yeah. No, yeah. And when I think about that, and kind of my thought process in that over the years, when you first come into a leadership role, you don't you don't want anybody to know, one, that you do have a weakness, and God forbid if you do have one, what that is, right? But as you develop as a leader, you come to understand that this is an opportunity to bring somebody alongside of you that is really strong in that area. And uh, I know that I use it a lot, but I go back to that example of, when I was the sheriff, um, there were certain strengths that I brought to that role, and there were things that I didn't have, but they shined in the guy that I chose as the undersheriff. And he really complimented me so well and kept me in check when I needed to be in check. But also just the fact that if there was an area where I wasn't real strong, he would pick up that ball, and he was, and it was, and I had no problems, going to him and saying, "Hey, this is, right up your alley. This is where you really shine, and kind of where are you at with this, and what do we need to do next?" So it's it's really important to understand where that's at, especially when you start having to make some critical decisions. And who is it that's strong in that area that we might want to bounce things off of? So, yeah, again, that personal leadership is so incredibly important.
Yeah, and if you don't know what your weaknesses are, you're not going to reach out to team members who are strong in those areas. That's why we have teams, because no one person is great at
Right.
everything. So it's a team atmosphere that really gels things together and does that high performance type of work that you just mentioned.
I think the next key point is really knowing who you want to be and the way that you want to show up. And we talked a little bit about, how we want to show up, but you have to know who you want to be before you can show up like that.
Mhm.
And it things like, vision setting and life plans, daily intentions to help keep us on track and give us something to work for. You and I have an opportunity to coach people through life planning and vision setting. And it's very easy to think that we can walk through those exercises on our own, but I I will tell you that that's not the case. It is so important to partner with somebody or to have a coach walk through that process with you.
Mhm.
And I think about you walking through that process with Mary.
Yeah, Mary and I have gone through a coaching process where she's the coach and I am the coachee, which is an unusual tack for me to take, but it's been so beneficial. I have literally walked hundreds of people through the life planning workshop to cast vision, to set goals, to write your own obituary, to really create a rail for your life to follow so that you're not just leaving things to chance, that you can do things with intention and you can get the best out of yourself that you can get. And when I was going through the when I was going through the coaching program with Mary, I had my personal business had just gone through a pretty significant shift. I like to say I lost my right arm. I started our business with our daughter, and she took a job that was part time to begin with to help them put their oldest child in private school. And all of a sudden, they realized what they had. Dang it! And they hired her full time, and basically, see you, mom. I gotta go. And I really felt like my right arm was cut off. And I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I was suddenly at this crossroads where I had a chance to look at our business that we had created, and it was a way that worked. And the whole point of that business was to support her so she could have a way to stay home and raise her children and work at home.
Hmm.
Um, and it looked a particular way. And all of a sudden, I had a chance to relook at this business and go, okay, what lights me up? What gives me energy? And I had to discover that, and Mary was just instrumental in helping me find that. And we walked through, ironically enough, a life plan and writing my obituary, and she said, "I know you've done this before." And I said, "I did. It was horrible. I don't like my obituary at all." And the reason that we write an obituary, just to avoid sounding morbid, is to cast a vision on what we want people to say about us when we're gone, and then we reverse engineer our lives to make sure that we behave in such a way that people can say those things
Right.
when we're gone. It's not at all to be morbid, but when I worked with Mary, she was able to help me as a coach see things about myself that I could not admit to, could not see because I wasn't objective enough. I was too wrapped up in the emotion and the weeds of it all. And we just mapped it all out. And I feel like I'm an entirely different person. I'm showing up for my business and my world completely differently than I was before. It's just been an amazing journey. And again, I know full well how to write a life plan. I know full well how to set visions and goals. But even I needed someone to walk alongside me to show me my blind spots and to help me think objectively.
Right. It's that one question that we like to ask ourselves. If you had a chance to do today over, what would you do differently? What would you do better? And when you plan on how you want to show up in advance, you can avoid those mistakes to begin with so that you don't regret the fact that you didn't do what maybe as you reflect what you wished you would have done. Because quite honestly, we don't get to do, today over, right? We get to learn from it, and we will grow from it. But if we can plan how we want to show up in advance, maybe there won't be so many regrets as to how today went.
Yeah, I'll give you another very non-law enforcement related example of this. Again, with our daughter, when she got married, obviously we're quite close. I'm losing my girl. You go through all those emotions as a mom that, you're giving her up and life's going to look totally different. And there was a huge part of me that was just so sad. And I can remember sitting myself down and literally a few days before the wedding, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, Kathy, your daughter is marrying the love of her life.
Right.
This is a happy day. You're going to show up. You're going to be happy, and you're going to be nothing but happy all day. And I was.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I had that talk with myself in advance so that I didn't have to look back on my daughter's wedding and think, I wish I wasn't such a wreck.
Right.
I wish I had it together more. Yes, I had emotions. I let myself experience those emotions. But even looking at some of the photos that we have, they're some of my favorite personal photos because I look happy, glowing, excited. But I had to convince myself that's who I wanted to show up as.
Yeah. Yeah, that becomes really important.
It is. And it's really about deciding how you want to show up as a leader every day, how you want to be known. Do you want to build some trust? Do you want to be known as somebody who builds trust? Do you want to be known as somebody who inspires others? Then decide that's how you want to behave and then go do it.
Right. So let's move to the next point, which is self-discipline in coaching. And when we look at self-discipline as a tool, it helps us stay on task and it helps us finish projects. And ultimately, it goes a long way to help us avoiding burnout. When we think about letting our paperwork pile up and the stress that it creates, now I just block time and make sure that I plan my day so that I get to the priorities, and I answer the emails, but I have to set a time aside to do that so that I can stay on task and I can stay focused.
I'm right there with you. And as a marketing strategist, I do a lot of different things for a lot of different clients. And when that work starts to build up and I start to procrastinate and I start to feel overwhelmed, that's when I'm most likely to let my personal leadership slip and I start to let things go that are very important to me, my spiritual health, my physical health. I don't want to walk today. I don't have time to walk today. I don't have time to get into the Bible. I don't have time when in fact, yes, I do. And I'm going to be a lot more efficient when I do the right things first. So, discipline also involves managing your distractions, and also knowing when to say no because you're at your limit and you don't want to take on anymore. And it's about prioritizing the things that keep you operating as your best self. And we all know how a 10-minute walk can help reset your mind.
Right.
We can't neglect our health and our wellness and our resilience to just go into full-time work mode.
Right.
And wow, in law enforcement, that's just so tempting. So tempting.
Yeah. And so many of us get into that, right? It's just because it is so tempting. There are so many distractions out there, and it's not uncommon to start to lose that self-discipline.
I'm going to ask you, and I know we haven't spent a lot of time on self-discipline. I think that that's more natural of the 3 tiers that we're talking about today. That's probably the most natural one. But I want to ask you, where is it that in your years of law enforcement, where is it that you have blown personal leadership and really made some mistakes in that area, or times when maybe you've grown a lot in that area, maybe not blown it, but really had opportunities to grow?
As you walk through in leadership, there's times where you can kind of feel like you're hitting on all cylinders. And I can remember, going through the process. I was a lieutenant. I went through the process to become a captain. Went through the captain's promotional process. And when I made that rank, when I made the captain rank, I was put into the administrative role at the sheriff's office. And at the time, that role supervised a couple of law enforcement functions, but really supervised mostly admin functions within the sheriff's office. And so that was, human resources and IT, finance, records. It, it was those supporting roles within law enforcement. And quite honestly, up until that point, I had never, I mean, you cross their paths. They're part of your functions that you do. If I needed, as a lieutenant, if I needed something from the budget, I'd get a hold of finance, or if I needed something from records, I'd get a hold of them. But every leadership position that I had held up until that point, I had worked in that job. I knew that job. And now I was walking into a function where I really didn't know the HR job or the records job or the IT job or the finance job. And I found myself understanding that a lot of my leadership was not necessarily leadership. It was managing. And it was managing because I knew the job that those that I was leading, I knew the job that they were doing. I really developed as a leader when I took on that captain's role, because I really had to start doing those things that leaders do, and that's getting out of the way and letting people do their jobs. I no longer even could be tempted to micromanage because I didn't know their functions, and I really had to rely on and build trust with and collaborate with those that were running those departments, right? So the manager of HR and records, the manager of IT, the manager of finance, they all reported to me. And I really had to build those strong relationships. I had to start understanding what they did. And then my leadership was just to make sure that I was there to really guide and direct them from a visionary perspective as to what it is that we were trying to accomplish within the sheriff's office. And that was such, at first, such an overwhelm. But I mean, I am so glad that I got that I had the opportunity to go through that experience, because there was a lot of growth in my leadership development being in that role.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, just going back to the first 2 tiers that we've talked about today, you had to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you were very weak in a lot of those areas.
Yeah.
And also, you had to know the type of leader that you wanted to show up as, and you wanted to be a team builder. You wanted to be collaborative. You wanted to be all those things that you are naturally. And here's this whole different environment where you have to exercise it totally differently than
Right.
you've done in the past. So you had to keep your personal leadership in check in order to give yourself the growth opportunities to move forward into that. Our next key to personal leadership is to work on continuous growth and even choosing a mentor. And I didn't see the tie-in in this and as we outlined in this podcast, but you didn't know budgeting, you didn't know finance, you didn't know HR, but all of a sudden you started going to conferences
Right.
that would giving you the tools that you needed to lead those people well. And I just think about the 10 county budget conference and,
Right.
all these other things. It wasn't that you just stepped back and let them have the show. You had to go through some personal growth and personal development so that you could best support them as the leader that they needed you to be as well.
To piggyback on that just slightly, you talked about, or I talked about, really that stepping back. When I go into a new position or part of a new team, I step back and I do a lot of observing. And I think that came from that time that I first took over administrative services as the captain, because it taught me to kind of close my mouth and listen more than I spoke, so that I could start taking all of that in before I really started making decisions that might affect any one of those units. So it has served me well over the years.
That's good. I would say that personal leadership demands continuous growth. I think that's part of it. Spiritually, professionally, academically. Stay curious. I love the word curious because it just leads you to things that might light you up that you never even knew about.
Right.
Take a course, write a book, start a podcast like we did. Maybe you fear public speaking, but you push through to grow your confidence and, develop that skill.
Yeah. Well, that whole coaching thing, we're often our own worst critic, or at times we can really be blind to our flaws. And the beauty of that coach, just like what Mary did for you, and I've had others do for me, from a mentor or a coach perspective, is seeing what I can't. When we have an opportunity to coach clients, we really have an opportunity to help executives create disciplined routines, to conquer overwhelm. And it could be as simple as time blocking or delegating non-core tasks. But it really is somebody who gets to look at it not in the weeds where they're at, but to look at it from a we often use the term a 30,000 foot level, and to really be able to point out, and we do it nicely, but kind of to point out some of the things that we're seeing, some of the flaws that they may be blind to.
It's said that we become most like the 3 people that we're closest to in our lives. So it's really important that we choose to be around people who are going to build us up, make us better, make us stronger. That doesn't mean we have to let everyone else go. It means we need to prioritize who we spend our time with and allow them to rub off on us in a way that's beneficial to an agency, a community, a department, an organization. Spend time with strong leaders. Spend time with people who are trustworthy, who are good at personal leadership and who do things right and do things well. As we start to wrap up this episode, I'm going to ask you again, as we normally do, give our listeners a challenge for the week. What's something that they can take and do this week that's going to help their personal leadership in the future?
Yeah, at first, I think it's just really reflecting on when was the last time you sat down and you thought about your personal leadership. So hopefully this podcast really puts you in that mindset. hey, where am I at? Take inventory, right, as to where you're at. And then I would just challenge, our listeners that take 15 minutes to write down one strength. Something as simple as crisis management. I'm really good at that. Or one weakness. And it could be, I'm not real good at delegation. And one value. Write those down and then set a daily intention for one day. Like, I'm going to lead with calm confidence as I walk through this. It's starting to get into that habit of planning your day, and planning to show up the way that you want to show up, right?
Mm-hmm. And, we've done a whole episode on building your leadership reputation. This goes a long way toward helping people see the leader that you decide you want to be.
Right.
You just build your own reputation. Overwhelm does not have to kill your potential. It can, but it doesn't have to. So when you know yourself, you set a vision, you stay disciplined, you seek mentors, you consider a coach. That's how you become a stronger leader tomorrow.
Right. That personal leadership, it gives us that opportunity to turn overwhelm into the leader that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's the foundation of trusted teams. It's the foundation of strong communities, and the legacy that you want to build, one that you can be proud of.
It certainly is. And we just invite you all to keep elevating your call to service. And we'll be back next time with a guest that we're very excited to introduce you to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ready to build a stronger team, improve your reputation, strengthen officer safety, and recruit top talent? Visit us at leleaders.com and schedule a call with us today. We'd love to discuss how our coaching programs, workshops, and keynote addresses can help you build proactive leaders in a reactive profession.
In the meantime, if you like what you've heard today, we'd love your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.